I want to tell you about a conversation I had 2 years ago that I have never been able to shake. A woman named Carol came into my office, 61 years old, retired accountant from Nashville, Tennessee. She had been walking every single day for 3 years without missing more than a handful of days. 30 minutes every morning, same route, same pace, same shoes she had bought when she started. She came to me not because she had stopped walking. She came because after 3 years of doing everything she believed was right for her health, her knees were grinding when she climbed stairs. Her lower back ached every evening. Her energy levels had dropped instead of rising. And her doctor had just told her that her inflammatory markers were elevated. 3 years of daily walking, and her body was measurably worse than when she started. She sat across from me and she said something I think about every time I see a new patient. She said, "I was doing what everyone told me was good for me. Why is it destroying me? I am Dr. William Carter, and I've practiced internal medicine for 23 years. Carol's question is not rare. It is the question behind almost every case of walking-related joint damage, chronic fatigue, and cardiovascular underperformance I see in people over 50. And the answer is always the same. It is never that walking is wrong. Walking is one of the most clinically powerful health interventions available to a person over 50. The research on this is not ambiguous. Regular walking reduces cardiovascular disease risk, slows cognitive decline, preserves bone density, maintains blood sugar regulation, and extends functional independence into old age. The answer is that the way most people walk after 50 is actively working against every one of those benefits, not just neutralizing them, reversing them. What I am going to walk you through today are the 7 specific mechanical, behavioral, and physiological mistakes that turn one of the healthiest activities on earth into a source of chronic damage. I will explain not just what each mistake is, but what is happening inside your joints, your cardiovascular system, your muscles, and your nervous system when you make it. Because when you understand the mechanism, you do not forget the correction. Stay with me to the end because mistake number 7 is the one nobody in a clinic ever discusses, and it may be the single most important thing I cover today. Before the mistakes, I need to give you one piece of biology that makes everything else make sense. After the age of 50, your body undergoes 4 measurable physiological shifts that change the rules of physical activity completely. The first is sarcopenia. This is the medical term for age-related muscle loss. After 50, the average person loses 1 to 2% of their total muscle mass every single year without targeted physical activity. Over a decade, that is 15 to 20% of the muscle that stabilizes your joints, regulates your blood sugar, holds your posture upright, and catches you when you stumble. The second shift is cartilage vulnerability. Cartilage, the smooth, cushioning tissue at the ends of your bones, has no blood supply of its own. It receives nutrition exclusively through movement, through the mechanical compression and release that pushes synovial fluid, the lubricating liquid inside joints, through its structure. Without the right kind of movement, at the right intensity, cartilage starves, it thins, it cracks. That is the beginning of osteoarthritis, and it is not inevitable, but the wrong walking habits accelerate it with depressing efficiency. The third shift is metabolic slowing. Your basal metabolic rate, the number of calories your body burns just to sustain itself at rest, drops 2 to 3% per decade after 50. The lifestyle that kept you healthy at 35 will, without any other change, produce weight gain, fatigue, and metabolic disease at 55. The fourth shift is circulatory efficiency. Blood vessel walls lose elasticity with age. Peripheral circulation, the blood flow reaching your legs, your feet, your smallest vessels, becomes measurably less efficient. Cold feet, nighttime leg cramps, the heavy, tired legs that arrive by the end of the afternoon. These are not random inconveniences, they are circulatory physiology. Walking, done correctly, addresses all 4 of these shifts simultaneously. It is the only free intervention that does. Done incorrectly, it adds a 5th problem to the 4 your body is already navigating. Here is how people do it wrong. Mistake number 1. You start your walk at full pace. This is the most universal error I see across every fitness level and every age group. People step outside and immediately move at the speed they intend to maintain for the next 30 minutes. It seems rational. Why walk slowly when you could be walking at the speed that actually does something? But your body is not a machine with a switch. It is a biological system that requires a transition period, and that transition cannot be skipped without consequences that accumulate over months and years. Here is what happens inside your body during those first minutes when you start too fast. Your muscle fibers are at resting temperature. Cold muscle tissue is significantly less elastic than warm tissue, which means the microscopic fibers that generate force are more brittle, more prone to the tiny tears that individually cause no pain, but collectively produce the chronic aching soreness that people attribute to aging. Your joint surfaces are not yet protected. Synovial fluid pools in the recesses of the joint cavity during rest. It needs 3 to 5 minutes of slow, gradual loading to spread evenly across the articular surfaces and form the protective film that prevents cartilage-on-cartilage contact. Start fast, and your cartilage is running without lubrication for the most mechanically demanding phase of your walk, and your cardiovascular system has not prepared. When intensity rises faster than the heart and vessels can adapt, blood pressure spikes more sharply and more steeply than it needs to. After 50, when arterial elasticity has already diminished, that unnecessary spike places stress on vessel walls that have less capacity to absorb it than they had a decade ago. The fix costs you nothing and takes no extra time. Spend the first 4 minutes of every single walk at a deliberately slow pace, not moderate. Slow enough that it feels almost too easy. That is not wasted time. That is the period during which your joints become protected, your muscles become elastic, and your heart settles into a sustainable working rhythm. After 4 minutes, you have biology working with you instead of against you. Then you can walk at full pace. Mistake number 2. Your posture while walking is destroying your spine one step at a time. Go outside right now and watch people walk. The overwhelming majority of them are doing some version of the same thing. Head jutted forward, chin dropped, shoulders rounded toward the ground, chest collapsed, eyes aimed at the pavement 3 feet ahead. This position feels natural because it is what sitting at a desk, looking at a phone, and driving have trained the body into. It is also a biomechanical catastrophe being executed several thousand times per walk. Here is the physics. A human head weighs approximately 11 pounds. When it sits directly over the spine in its anatomically neutral position, the cervical spine and the muscles of the neck carry exactly that 11 pounds. When the head shifts forward by just 1 inch, which is a shift so subtle most people cannot feel it, the effective load on the cervical spine more than doubles. At 2 inches of forward shift, which is typical for someone walking while looking at the ground, the load on the neck and upper back muscles rises to 45 to 55 pounds. Your neck is carrying the equivalent of a large bag of dog food continuously for the duration of your walk. This is why people come home from a 30-minute walk with a neck ache they attribute to tension or aging. The tension is real. The cause is mechanics. But the spinal load is only part of the problem. When your shoulders round forward and your chest collapses, your diaphragm, the dome-shaped primary breathing muscle that sits below your lungs, cannot fully descend during inhalation. Your lungs cannot fully expand. You are breathing from the upper chest only, accessing perhaps 60% of your lung capacity. Less oxygen reaches your blood, less oxygen reaches your muscles. You walk for 30 minutes and arrive home as tired as if you had walked for an hour. People call this poor fitness. It is poor posture. Correct it, and your endurance improves without any change to distance or pace. The correction is simple to describe and requires daily practice to hold. Imagine a thread attached to the top of your head, pulling you very gently upward. Not a military brace, not forced rigidity, just a gentle decompression of the spine. Chin parallel to the ground, eyes on the horizon ahead, not the pavement. Shoulders drawn back just enough to open the chest, then allowed to relax in that position. In this alignment, your neck carries 11 pounds, your lungs work at full capacity, and the mechanical chain from your hips through your knees to your ankles operates at the angles it was designed for. Mistake number 3. Your shoes are aging your joints faster than time is. This is the topic that gets the least attention from patients and generates some of the most serious long-term consequences in my clinical experience. Most people think about their shoes the way they think about their glasses. They buy them when they need them, they replace them when they break or look bad, and they give almost no thought to what the shoe is actually doing between their foot and the ground. After 50, That indifference becomes expensive. Two changes in your foot biology make shoe choice critical after this age. The first is fat pad atrophy. The fat pads on the soles of your feet, concentrated at the heel and the ball of the foot, are your body's built-in shock absorbers. They cushion the impact of your heel striking the ground with every step. The force of that impact is roughly 1 to 1.5 times your body weight on flat ground. Your fat pads are designed to absorb that force. After 50, they thin measurably, year by year. The shock they cannot absorb travels up the mechanical chain: ankle, knee, hip, lumbar spine. If your shoes are not compensating for that diminished natural cushioning, every walk is delivering unabsorbed impact to cartilage that is already more vulnerable than it was at 35. The second change is arch integrity. The tendons and muscles supporting the arch of the foot weaken with age and with the cumulative wear of decades of standing and walking. The arch begins to flatten. When the arch flattens even partially, the entire mechanical axis of the lower extremity shifts. The knee begins to track inward instead of straight forward. The load distribution across the knee joint becomes uneven. The hip joint begins rotating to compensate. The lower back tightens in response to the chain of compensations below it. Proper arch support in a walking shoe does not reverse this process, but it slows it substantially and prevents the cascade of compensatory stress from traveling upward through the body. What your walking shoe must have after 50: genuine heel and forefoot cushioning, not a thin rubber sole with a soft inner liner, but a proper midsole with shock absorption built into the structure. Arch support that follows the natural contour of your foot, not a flat insole. And a sole that flexes at the ball of the foot so that the heel-to-toe rolling motion of each step can occur naturally, without forcing the calf muscles and Achilles tendon to strain against a rigid platform. One more fact about shoes that patients consistently find surprising: the midsole of a walking shoe, the layer that performs the actual shock absorption, loses approximately 50% of its shock-absorbing capacity after 300 to 400 miles of use. The outer sole often looks nearly new at that point. The structural protection is gone. If you walk 30 minutes 5 days a week, you are covering roughly 500 miles in a year. Your shoes are protecting your joints with half the capacity they had when new. Replace walking shoes every 12 months. Not because they look worn, because the protection is gone. Mistake number 4. You walk once a week for a long time and believe you have exercised. This is one of the most clinically frustrating patterns I encounter, because the person practicing it almost always believes they are being diligent. They are busy during the week. On Saturday or Sunday they do a long walk, 60 minutes or more, and they feel they have met their body's requirements for the week. From a physiological standpoint, this belief is not just incorrect, it is actively harmful. Your body does not adapt to what you did once. It adapts to what you do repeatedly. The cardiovascular improvements that walking produces, increased stroke volume in the heart, improved arterial elasticity, better glucose transport into muscle cells, enhanced mitochondrial efficiency, all of these require repeated signals to develop. One signal per week is not enough to trigger adaptation. The body never shifts out of its baseline state. The long walk produces temporary fatigue in muscles that are unadapted to sustained loading. The soreness the next day is not fitness developing, it is an unprepared musculoskeletal system recovering from an unusual stress. People feel that soreness and conclude walking is hard on their joints. The correct conclusion is that infrequent loading is hard on unadapted joints. The clinical evidence on this is clear and has been replicated across multiple study populations. 20 to 30 minutes of walking on 5 to 6 days per week produces measurable reductions in cardiovascular disease risk, type 2 diabetes incidence, and all-cause mortality. That is the minimum effective dose, and it requires the frequency more than the duration. If you currently walk once a week, do not immediately try to walk 5 days a week. Start with 3. Keep the sessions at 20 minutes. After 2 weeks, add a 4th day. After another 2 weeks, add the 5th. Consistency of frequency is the variable your biology is responding to. Duration is secondary. Mistake number 5. Your arms are not moving and it is costing you more than you realize. People hold their arms stiff at their sides hands in their pockets or clasped together in front of them. It feels relaxed. It is, in fact, a mechanical disruption that reduces the benefit of every walk you take and adds stress to the lower spine. Walking is a cross-pattern movement. When your left leg steps forward, your right arm is meant to swing forward simultaneously. When your right leg steps forward, your left arm moves. This pattern is wired into the nervous system at a deep neurological level, and it serves a specific mechanical purpose. It distributes the rotational forces generated by walking symmetrically across the spine. With each step, there is a twisting force in the trunk. Arm swing counters that twist on the opposite side. Without arm swing, the lower back must absorb that rotational stress unbalanced, thousands of repetitions per walk. For anyone with existing lower back vulnerability, this is significant. Beyond the mechanical argument, arm swing recruits the muscles of the shoulder, upper chest, and upper back into the work of walking. More active muscle mass means higher caloric expenditure for the same distance, better circulation to the upper body, and a more complete cardiovascular stimulus. The same 30-minute walk with proper arm movement is a physiologically different, more beneficial activity than the same walk with arms immobile. Bend your elbows to roughly 90 degrees. Let them swing forward and back in natural rhythm, opposite to the leg movement. Not the exaggerated pumping of a competitive race walker, just the natural pendulum motion your body was designed to use. Within a few walks, it becomes automatic, and the rhythm of your stride improves immediately. Mistake number 6. Your phone is in your hand, and it is not just a distraction, it is a structural threat. 20 years ago, this mistake was not possible. Today, I see it on every street, every park path, every hospital corridor. People walking while reading a message, scrolling a feed, or watching a video, believing they are multitasking their health. They are not multitasking. They are walking while progressively damaging their cervical spine and simultaneously removing the neurological benefit that made the walk worth taking. The posture consequence alone is serious. When you look at a screen you are holding in your hand, your head drops forward. We have already established what a 2-inch forward head shift does to the load on your cervical spine. Looking at a phone produces exactly that shift, reliably, every time, for the entire duration you are looking at the screen. Now add the safety dimension. After 50, the vestibular system, your inner ear's balance and spatial orientation apparatus, begins to operate with slightly less precision. Proprioception, your body's real-time sense of its own position in space, also diminishes gradually with age. These are normal biological changes. What they mean functionally is that your brain increasingly depends on visual information to maintain balance and navigate terrain. When your eyes are locked on a screen instead of reading the path ahead, your brain is being denied its most important source of spatial data. You stop registering uneven pavement, a raised curb, a patch of wet leaves, a single step down. The risk of a fall rises. And I want to be direct about what a fall means after 50, because the medical community tends to be euphemistic about this. A fall after 50 is not a bruise and a momentary embarrassment. It is frequently a fractured wrist from catching yourself, fractured ribs from landing wrong, or a hip fracture. A hip fracture in a person over 65 initiates a medical cascade that includes surgery, extended hospitalization, months of rehabilitation, and in a meaningful percentage of cases, a permanent reduction in independent function. The phone in your hand is not a minor issue. It is a fall risk factor you have complete control over. Put it in your pocket. If you want audio, use earphones. Keep your eyes where your feet are going and your head in the position your spine was designed to maintain. Mistake number 7. You treat the walk as complete when you stop walking. And nobody, not your doctor, not a trainer, not a wellness article, is telling you why this is wrong. The assumption behind the mistake is that walking is light enough that recovery is irrelevant. The assumption is incorrect, and the consequences of it accumulate across months and years into the chronic stiffness, the persistent fatigue, and the slow joint deterioration that people attribute to getting older. Here is what is actually happening. During a walk, your major muscle groups, the calves, the quadriceps at the front of the thighs, the hamstrings at the back, the hip flexors that lift the leg with each step, are all contracting repeatedly in a shortening mode. Repeated contraction without subsequent stretching leaves these muscles slightly shortened from their resting length. After one walk, this effect is negligible. After weeks and months of walking without stretching, the shortening accumulates. Your calves become tight. Your hip flexors shorten. Your lower back stiffens in response to the tightened structures pulling on it. The range of motion in your hips and ankles decreases. Your walking mechanics change as your body compensates for the reduced flexibility. And the change in walking mechanics begins to load joints at slightly wrong angles, which over further months produces the joint pain that everyone assumes is simply arthritis arriving. Much of it is not arthritis. It is accumulated muscular shortening from years of insufficient post-walk stretching. 5 minutes. That is all the stretching required to prevent this entirely. Calves, hamstrings, hip flexors, lower back. 5 minutes after every walk, before you sit down, before you make the coffee, before you check your phone. 5 minutes is the margin between a walking habit that preserves your joints and one that slowly destroys them. The hydration component of recovery is equally overlooked. Muscle tissue is approximately 75% water. Every biochemical process in muscle, contraction, relaxation, repair of the micro-damage that exercise normally causes, occurs in a water-based environment. Even a 1 to 2% reduction in your body's fluid stores, an amount too small to produce the sensation of thirst, measurably impairs muscle elasticity and slows the repair process. After a walk, drink a glass of water before you do anything else. Not a sports drink, water. And rest days matter for the same reason. Your body does not adapt to the stress of walking during the walk. It adapts during the hours of recovery that follow. If you walk every day without rest days, your body is perpetually in the loading phase and never fully enters the adaptation phase. The strength gains, the cardiovascular improvements, the joint remodeling that makes your walking habits sustainable long-term, all of these happen during recovery. 1 to 2 rest days per week is the protocol, not laziness. Physiology. Now here is what I want you to do before you take your next walk. Think about Carol. 3 years of daily walking, every single day, and her body was measurably worse than when she started. Not because walking failed her, because 7 specific, correctable, mechanical, and behavioral errors were compounding inside her routine every single morning, and nobody had ever explained the mechanism to her. In 6 weeks of correcting those 7 things, Carol's knee pain was gone. Her morning energy was the first thing she mentioned at her follow-up appointment. She told me she felt like she had been given back something she thought was just the price of getting older. It was not the price of getting older. It was the price of 7 mistakes made thousands of times with complete sincerity and no information. Here is the complete correction in plain language. Slow down for the first 4 minutes of every walk without exception. Check your posture at the door before you leave. Spine long, chin level, eyes forward, chest open. Examine your shoes, and if they are more than a year old and you walk regularly, replace them. Walk on at least 5 days of the week for 20 to 30 minutes, rather than once for a long time. Let your arms swing naturally, elbows bent, opposite to each leg. Put your phone in your pocket for the entire walk. And after every walk, drink a glass of water and spend 5 minutes stretching the muscles that just worked. 7 corrections. Each one costs nothing. Each one has a biological mechanism behind it that is real and documented, and that operates every single time you walk, whether or not you know it is happening. Now you know. Use it. Leave me one thing in the comments. Tell me your age, and tell me which of these 7 mistakes you have been making without knowing it. I read every comment on this channel, and your answers shape everything I cover next. Because the next video addresses something specific that happens to the joints in your lower body during the decade after 50 that most people mistake for inevitable aging, and that is almost entirely preventable with the right information. That video is on your screen right now.